Welcome to Valuu Spotlight, a series where your host Ryan Purvis, joined with a guest, will discuss products that they use in their daily lives.
So let's talk about Zapier. And in fact, what I was thinking about is there's almost a stack of things that we use to do all this stuff. So we use Microsoft Teams for recording typically. And obviously we're trying out RiverStream, which we do have an affiliate link for, or I need to do one for that. We use Descript for editing most of the time, which is good. And then we use HubSpot as our main CRM, and that ties in with Kit, which used to be called ConvertKit for our mailing list. Now, the thing that hangs it all together is Zapier. And I've used Zapier for a very long time. Probably, I want to say 10 years. I don't know, maybe I could see how many my first zaps here. But what Zapier does and why it's so valuable is it connects all these things together. Let's see if I can go find my first zap. I see, but I did go through it. I did delete a whole bunch a while ago. So 2023 is definitely before that. But as you can see, I've got plenty here, and they're not all on. There's 53 here. And what you do is you connect different services together. And this is all down the route of automation of manual tasks. But also, if I just filter it by the ones that are on right now, not that one. Go back to the first page. Oh, no, that's fine. It's now at the bottom. For example, there's not a direct integration between HubSpot and ConvertKit. So I had to create a flow that every time we add a contact in HubSpot, they get tagged and they get added to Kit. And then we're tagging them back in HubSpot. So something like that runs in the background, and we're adding people, every day. That's hugely valuable. And that's the kind of automation that this is really good for. You'll see some other ones here, and this is part of our flow for the podcast. So, oh wait, this is because we use OneDrive now. We used to use Dropbox. So whenever we record and there's another tool that I use called Hazel, which is a Mac specific piece of tech. And I'll just bring it up for a second here. So what Hazel will do is it'll monitor certain folders, and then based on criteria, and if you look here at the bottom, you can see the criteria, it'll move or copy the files or tag them into a folder. So this is what's happening right now, is when I do recording with Teams, it'll store it in the recordings folder on OneDrive. Yeah, keep with me on this process. The minute those files download, Hazel will move it into the shared folder for podcast, right? And then that'll kick off this process, which will create the Notion record, which tells us we've got an episode that needs to be edited. And then it captures what information it can capture. And back in the day when I first started doing the podcast, I used to have a really long flow. I want to see if it's even here. But in essence, it would read the feed. So every time we posted an episode, it would create the newsletter and send the newsletter by itself. We've obviously now done that a different way because we want to add other stuff to it. But that's where Zapier is so useful. And what they've really done nicely over the time is they've started bringing in some of the modern stuff. So you can build your chatbots, your agents, and I use this with Notion often, where if I want to do my prompt, I can go create a prompt and then I connect that to Zapier. Zapier goes and talks to ChatGPT, gets the answer, brings it back to Notion. And then I've got the answer and I don't have to go and open up a web browser and talk to ChatGPT. I was also doing some stuff here, like with my voice memos, where the voice memo would arrive on my device. Hazel would move it into Dropbox. It would then be transcribed by Otter in those days. It would then take that, send that off to ChatGPT with a prompt. It'd get a response, upload the file, and create a Word document for me where the prompt has now converted my random musings, whatever it was, into something that I can use. And then it would add, it would create blog posts, book outlines, whatever it was. So I would generate all these things and I'd just throw it into Notion, which is quite useful because when I go for my walks, often I just sit and talk to myself and come up with stuff. So, Notion, Zapier is a really cool tool from that point of view. And then what they've done over time is instead of having to have a placeholder in a third-party tool, which is how I've used Notion, you can now create your own tables inside of Zapier. You can create your own interfaces, screens to capture information, forms and such in Zapier. So as much as they can tie you together with thousands of other applications, you can also build your own interfaces in here. Here's the post all platforms one. So here's how we did it. We took the feed from Transistor, which was our old platform, put in Notion. We would then send everything to Buffer, and then we would send stuff out. Buffer would queue it up to go into Twitter, to LinkedIn, to the email. And then it would also put it again for 30 days later. So we'd have a double post for everything. So that's where this stuff's really powerful. And then the last thing, which I haven't played with yet, but which is quite new, is the agent. So everyone now is building agents in their platforms. You can go sign up to Amazon, you can sign up to Azure, etc. But they've now provided a place for you to come create your own agent, which is really great because now your transactional stuff can go through your agent and have context. And I think this will be quite powerful when it starts working. I haven't played with it yet, so I don't know how it works. But that they've put it in here tells me that they're really getting the value of their connection to other applications, but then also thing. Now there's other tools. There's N8N, there's Make, there's IFTTT, if this then that. All useful, all really good. I'm just stuck in Zapier because, as you can see, I've spent a lot of time in it. But I think if you're not using these tools, you're falling behind. But I think that these are great tools to start off with until you actually build. Like I'm talking to a company at the moment where they've used Zapier to connect everything together, and it's very clunky, and they actually now want to build the tool that they need for the business. And then that becomes the more sophisticated thing. Microsoft has Power Apps and Logic Apps. Power Apps is probably closer to what this is. Logic Apps is a much more lower level plumbing tool for integrations. But yeah, really good tool to use. Couldn't recommend it enough. And as you can see, it saves me about a bundle of time.
How much does it cost? Like, what's the difference? Is there a free tier? Is there?
Yeah, let's see. We've opened up a new window here. So we're on a very small plan. I used to have a very big plan. I think this costs me about £80 a month, give or take, for a small plan. There is a free tier, but a free tier is not worth it for all these things because it's really like one flow with one activity. And as you can see, it's very easy to have multiple steps. And it does come back to the question around what's your time worth versus this thing doing your story.
Yep. But we love Zapier, so.
We do. Yeah, it's a good tool. And I mean, I've chatted to I think he's the founder or the CEO when they had the original design interface. Let me open up one that I was playing with. So this design interface has actually improved a lot, but if I click on this and you go look through configure, you can see there's a lot of things to fill in. Now, their design interface is a lot better than, say, Power Apps with Microsoft. I really can't stand Power Apps. I haven't, to the point I haven't touched it again since I last touched it. What's quite nice about this is they've made some things to make this more keyboard driven. So I can press a slash now and actually get to the properties, and I can also click here and get to the properties. So they've really tried to make that stuff work better. Where they take a different approach. Some of these, so Zapier's always had a top-down approach, which does make sense. But some of them go left to right, which I actually prefer. And when I was doing business process stuff, when I was still working with your dad, we had a lot of editors and they were left to right. And I just think that, again, fair enough. We grew up in a culture of left to right. If I was in a culture of right to left, a right to left would make sense to me. I find top down is nice because you can scroll. I can roll my fingers. But when I'm thinking about a process and I'm flowing it, I don't think about processes flowing down. I think about them flowing from left to right. And if you think about Six Sigma and lean and all that stuff, it's always shift left to reduce waste. So top down it just never makes sense to me. But that said, cool tool, integrations with a whole bunch of stuff. You can see what I use a lot of, what I'm connected to. But really where their value is, and I'm trying to see if there's a gallery here, is how much stuff they're connected to. One thing I didn't mention, which is also very cool, which I added probably a year ago, is that when you build your Zap and you publish it, it'll version it. So you can roll different versions. The only problem with that is if you make too many changes and you've got Zaps that are stuck, at some point they can't be unstuck because the version has changed too much from the original version. So that's a bit of a thing. And debugging these things is a bit tricky. It can fail somewhere and you have to go fix it manually and then you try replay it, but it doesn't always work. So if I go to my this is telling you what's broken in this thing. So you got to connect re-authenticate things.
Yep.
Make sure it's connected. But if I show you the Zap history, oops, there, that one. You can see there'll be some here that are held. You'll see here there's some errors. And this is where it can be a little bit funky. Okay, so this one didn't have an email address. An email address is important because we use email address to search for the person in HubSpot, and then we send that to things. So this is one that I'll just probably delete because if we don't have the email address, we don't have the email address.
We have every app under the sun connected to this thing, right?
There are thousands. I mean, here we go. So the top, there's 8,197 apps. So by far they got the widest spread. And what does tend to happen, if I think of like, for example, Notion, the adapter for Notion in Zapier is not as good as the Notion adapter in Make.
Yeah.
Because they've just taken a better approach or whatever it is. So sometimes what happens is I'll use Make for one thing. Well, and I'm now looking at N8N, which is the new one, or the new one people are talking about. I haven't tried it too much, but because there'll be things that they just do differently, which helps build flows.
Yep.
But no one's got the amount of connections right now that Zapier's got.
Yeah, 100%.
So
are you recommending this?
Yeah, definitely. This we would not have been able to do this podcast 4 years ago if I didn't have Zapier.
Yeah.
That's how fundamental it was. And as much as we have switched CRMs and we switched newsletter providers, whatever, Zapier has been the consistent thing. The only shit thing which I found out recently is some of the products I used to use, like Medium, and products that I want to use, like Substack, don't allow integrations with these platforms because they don't want people automating their content generation, which I find quite silly because what we used to do is when I used to publish it out automatically is I used to post in Medium our blog, our show notes straight away. And now I can't do that anymore, which is a bit silly because it kind of, rather than me go and do manually, I just won't use Medium anymore because that adds more work for me. And, we don't generate much out of Medium, but I thought it was always a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this does, is this gives you the opportunity to really, as a small business, maximize your throughput by integrating with a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely recommend.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe to see other product reviews, founders conversations, and podcast episodes.